Hello, hello. This is going to be hopefully a pretty quick video, just going over the synth sounds in Ascension by Donna. I'm just going to play what I made first, and we'll get into the video. So yeah, so first I'm just gonna go over the lead sound. So I decided to do this sound in Diva because it's obviously a very analog sound. The original video uses like 3 different Moog synths, so I figured this would probably be the best bet for that style of sound. Although you can probably get very close in other subtractive synths. So speaking of which, it is a fairly basic subtractive sound. It uses pretty standard waveforms. So yeah, first thing I did was went over to the oscillator section and set the waveform to something between a square and a like full pulse wave. That's what's giving it that like sort of old school chiptune sound. I have Serum here just to give a little demonstration as to that effect. So that's your standard square wave. Obviously, it's got a pretty like rounded sound, and when you apply or when you use a more modulated version of the sound, sounds like sort of tinny and bright. You get the same thing if you just use the PWM knob here. So yeah, that's was my starting point. I've got a little bit of automation going on just so that it let's see, it moves a little bit here. That's just to give it a bit of movement. I don't even know if it's particularly audible, but I figured I would try it. So then for the second oscillator, I've got a triangle wave. I just used that sort of as a supporting layer just to give it a bit of a rounder bottom end. And play that by itself. So yeah, not a particularly bright sound, just gives the fundamental a little more beef. So yeah, and I sort of just blended those two to taste. Second thing is the filter. So first I was messing around with the envelope. At first I had a pretty aggressive envelope, but I eventually pulled it back. It's really not doing much here. So yeah, it's just got a little delay on the attack. I would just mess around with the decay until it sounded right. For the most part though, the biggest change I'm doing to the filter is a little bit of automation that gives the sound its the bulk of its movement. It gives it sort of the rising and falling feel. I don't know how that's done in the original track. I don't know how it's configured on the Moog. I assume there's a little more to the Lfos on a 16K synthesizer than what's in here. I haven't really fully figured out the Lfos in Diva yet. I'm gonna have to make that a project, give myself a little bit of homework, but yeah, I was originally gonna do that with one of these, but I just figured it would be easier to automate that. You can see it goes up pretty high and then falls back down over the course of like 4 bars. It repeats about every 4 bars, and it starts at a lower point than the rest of the passage. So yeah, and then another thing that I felt gave it a lot of movement was the phaser. I'm gonna play it with and without the phaser. Without. So yeah, it definitely makes a difference. It's fairly subtle in the context of the whole mix, but little things like that will add up. And yeah, so I'm using the stoned type because it's not really a flanger sound. It's just a very kind of warm, rounded phaser sound. I think overall the lead sound could be a little bit darker. I think I went a bit too bright with this, but it's not too far off. And the I didn't add in vibrato again because I couldn't really figure out the Lfos. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the lead sound. Oh, post-processing. I used a little bit of distortion to give it a little beef. Play it again with and without. So yeah, not a whole lot, but I'm using one of the more analog overdrive settings in Saturator, so it doesn't make it too bright. It just kind of rounds out the bottom end a bit, which is nice. I think it needs a little bit of that. And then the final thing is the delay. I'll play that with it now. There wasn't really any method to this. It was kind of just screwing around with settings until something sounded right. Quarter note delay seemed to be the only thing that really worked. I don't know why. It just, I guess that's what worked in the original track, so that's what I went with. Then I have a bit of diffusion on. That's just to give it a bit more space. And then I have a fairly aggressive EQ here, because the repeats, the whole delay section doesn't really sound like the original at all. It's sort of meant to sound distant, so I wanted to cut out the extreme ends of the spectrum. So yeah, that's about it for this. Then go on to the bass sound. Again, pretty simple sound. It's pretty much just a saw wave. If I play it without the effects, this is what you get. Yeah, it's let's see. Yeah, it's a combination of a triangle wave and a saw wave. Obviously I've got a little bit more of the triangle because it is meant to be a bassier sound, so you don't want all of those high harmonics. And then I've got a bit of the saw wave. It's just to give it a little bit more grit. And then most of the effect is of the bass is coming from the effects here. Chorus. Gives it the width and texture, and then the reverb gives it a little bit more size. I could have spent a little bit longer messing around with this stuff, but it got pretty close. Oh, I forgot to mention glide. Not really a lot of glide. This is like barely perceptible, but it sounded better with this than without it. 16, so yeah, not a lot, but the note transitions sound pretty harsh without it, so I just decided to throw that on there. This almost done. Then the final sound, this is just a preset. This is just the Tonic Chord. So yeah, this is using I think the Jupiter or the Juno oscillators. It's got a lower octave saw wave and a higher octave, I guess that's a pulse wave, and it blended more towards the saw wave. Not really a whole lot going on with the filter. And the envelopes, again, not really a whole lot. So this is just opening up the filter a little bit more. And yeah, the other envelope's adding some release. So yeah, this is just making it sound super ethereal and big. Pretty similar effect to what you've got going on with the bass. Almost identical. I think it's the same effects too. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot going on here. It's just about adding in automation or modulation in some way to give a bit of movement, and just adds a bit more character to the leads. So yeah, that's it.